Good afternoon. Today, December 10th, 2013, the world comes to a pause as we celebrate the life, legacy, and extraordinary example of Nelson Mandela. As leaders from all over the globe, in every region, north, south, east, and west, come together in Johannesburg, we are reminded that Nelson Mandela was much more than a man. He was much more than a leader. He transcended and became a symbol of hope, a symbol of reconciliation, a symbol of victory, but most of all, a symbol of love. There's so many things that I could say about Nelson Mandela and how his life and his extraordinary legacy have impacted me, and particularly my decision to go into public service after graduating from law school. I would like to share three things that I think most exemplify Nelson Mandela and what I learned from him. The first is that Nelson Mandela taught us, not just through words, but through his deeds and his actions, that you can overcome anything. He wasn't just wrongfully convicted, he was wrongfully imprisoned. And he was in prison for almost 3 decades. Yet he came out and became president of the same country that he had been jailed in. He is a reminder that no matter what situation we're going through, no matter what challenge, it doesn't have to break us. It might just be the thing that propels us to greatness. He is a modern day Joseph. He went from the pit to the prison to the palace. Thank you, Nelson Mandela, for showing us that we can be anything we want to be. Secondly, Nelson Mandela is an example that great things often come from the most unexpected places. Scripture teaches us that God uses the foolish things of this world to confound the wise. Nelson Mandela was not born into an earthly royal family or into a family of material wealth, yet he became one of the greatest people to have ever lived, celebrated in every part of this world, in socialist and democratic countries alike. He's a reminder for all of us that no matter where we might have started in life, that doesn't matter. We can still be great. Not in spite of our challenges, but maybe because of them. Thirdly, and perhaps most importantly, Nelson Mandela is an example that love conquers all. He is a walking, talking, breathing personification of what love and reconciliation is. If it was anyone who had a right to be ticked off, it was Nelson Mandela. He was born into a system of racial segregation, an unjust and unfair system, and he was in prison for nearly 3 decades, but yet he came out of that very same prison and embraced the people who persecuted and prosecuted him. He's an example that even though we might have a right to bitterness, we don't have to let it take root in our hearts. In fact, he would often say, no one is born hating another race. They're taught it. And if you can learn hate, we can teach love. And love is more powerful than its opposite. He's a reminder that we don't have to be resentful for the things that might have happened to our lives in our lives wrongfully, but instead we can use it to bring people together. Thank you, Nelson Mandela, for your extraordinary life and your example. Thank you, Nelson Mandela, because you never stopped and you never quit, even though you had a right to. Thank you, Nelson Mandela, for choosing to be a person that showed us what love truly is. Thank you, Nelson Mandela, for choosing reconciliation over resentment. Thank you, Nelson Mandela, for being victorious in a system where you were meant to be a victim. Thank you, Nelson Mandela, for lifting up not only your country and your continent, but for people all over the world. Thank you, Nelson Mandela, for all that you've done and for all that you stand for. We love you, we honor you on this day, and we thank you for all that you've done. Madiba, Nelson Mandela, even though you are gone from this earth physically, your legacy lives on, and it's greater than ever. Your legacy lives on in the hearts and minds of people who wish to make this world a better place. We will never forget you. We will never forget what you've done. We will never forget your sacrifice. You will live on forever.